Here, somebody took my gavel.
Oh, I got it. I'll give it to you.
No, don't.
Oh, yeah.
I was only kidding.
Grab Zach's
There we go.
Okay. I can't depend on that clock back there
One
anymore.
more minute. I'll tell you. It's 6 o'clock.
Welcome to the November 15, 2022 regular meeting of the Charter Township of Meridian Township Board. Tonight is a special meeting for us because we have invited our boards and commissions to join us and meet with us and talk with us tonight. So if you will, join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Lemaster, would you give us a roll call, please?
Supervisor Jackson.
Here.
Clerk Guthrie.
Here.
Treasurer DeShane.
Here.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Here.
Trustee Sundlin.
Here.
Trustee Wilson.
Here.
Trustee Wazinski.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. I would entertain an approval of our agenda. Trustee Wazinski.
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented. Let's say attached, but
And supported by
That makes
Clerk
sense.
Guthrie. Thank you. All in favor of the approval of the agenda, please say yes.
yes.
All right. Opposed? And so the agenda is approved. We move on to item 5, which is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight is our usual communications, minutes of our November 1, 2020 regular meeting, bills, and 2 resolutions that we needed to get in at this time in November. The first is a resolution in support of Small Business Saturday on November the 26th, and as well as support for a special program in the township called Township Bonus Bucks, a gift card program. I hope that those of you who are interested will read the whole resolution, but the Bonus Bucks program is supposed to start Saturday, November the 26th, 2022. It is a program sponsored by both the Meridian Area Business Association and the Meridian Economic Development Corporation. Involves $50 gift cards to patrons of participating businesses in our township, that many of which have been negatively impacted by all of the road construction going on. The second resolution is in support of Native American Heritage Month. It calls for an observance of Native American Heritage Month in November, and recognition of the Friday after Thanksgiving as Native American Heritage Day. That resolution also calls for continued support and appreciation of the programs and activities in the township sponsored by the Nokomis Cultural Heritage Center. And I would urge all of you interested to read the whole resolution and join us in our support. And so because this is part of the consent agenda, we need a roll call vote for approval.
We also need a motion in a second.
Need a motion first. Treasurer DeShane.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Trustee Trustee Hendrickson will allowed to do that this time. Now, a roll call vote, Mr. the Master.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson,
Yes.
Trustee Sundlin,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. Item 6 on our agenda will be a presentation by our manager, a recap of our 2020 township goals and accomplishments.
2022.
I'm sorry, 2022, corrected.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Good evening to everyone. A couple things before I start. One is I sent a note to all the volunteers today about our No Shave November program that supports Meridian Cares. The captain has a thing here with a QVC code, and he'll pass it around. If anybody would like to help support the Meridian Cares in our police department, please do so. Thank you. Second thing is I'm moved by seeing Georgia Steica in here tonight and remembering what Ron Steica, our former supervisor, committed to this community for 30 years. 20 of those on the Okemos School Board, and additionally 10 or 12 years on the Township Board starting in 2012. In Georgia, we certainly miss Ron and his contributions to our community. Going to go through real quick 2022. Typically when we've done this in the past, we always go through the past year, but then we also highlight the next year ahead of us. And we do that in February. Well, because we've got off kilter 3 years now because of COVID, we're doing this in November. So we're only going to talk about 2022 because the board is going to be setting their goals for 2023 here in the next few weeks. In 2022, the goals set by the board dealt with infrastructure, DEI, economic development, finances, environment, art funding, public safety, and recruitment and retention and well-being of our staff. Let's talk about infrastructure. The new water tower, the water tower that we've improved on the north side of the community and put the new township logo on. That's up by Saginaw Highway. The Okemos Road Bridge replacement, this is a county project, $9 million. We didn't have to contribute to it here locally. We expect the project to be finished in the next 6 to 7 weeks. Pretty close to the Thanksgiving deadline that they presented a long time ago. And great patience by the community. Grand River construction, everything east of Marsh is finished. There's 2 more segments left to go. The last segment to be completed will be in January, and that's in front of Playmakers. The local road program, as you know, the voters approved a bond millage in 2019 to fund our local roads going forward. It's about a 1.9 mill levy that brings in approximately $4 million a year. Let's talk about our PASER rating. That's the rating that you rate your local roads. And as you can see, back when we started this in 2019, we had a PASER rating of just over 4. The PASER rating goes from 1 to 10, so we weren't even average. We were just above poor. Our goal is to get to an 8 by the end of the program, and as you can see, we're making great progress on our project, although I want to be very transparent here. That 6.14 does not take into account, I mean, we're making great progress, but it doesn't take into account the deterioration of the roads that we haven't gotten to when we first started the program. So that number may actually be in the mid-5s right now, but we're making very steady progress going forward. And here illustrates the chart of us trying to get to an 8, and we're actually further ahead than we expected to be at this time. DEI, something this board, this community and the staff takes very seriously. We had our first annual Juneteenth event this past summer. The Honorable Judge Wanda Stokes came and spoke to, we had over 100 of our employees on the first Monday or the third Monday in June, marking the Juneteenth celebration. We continue to increase our diversity in the workplace. There's an effort across Michigan and nationwide to get to 30% female officers by 2030, 30 by 30 it's called. Well, we're way ahead. The average in the state of Michigan right now is 17.2, and Meridian Township is at 26% females in our police department. We're gonna make the 30 by 30. We may be one of the first in the state to do so. One of the things that we've done here recently is included sanitary products in all of our township restrooms. Economic development. The American House Meridian up in Hazlet on the far 10 acres on the side of the property. Hazlet's been dormant for about 15 years. Trying to do something with the Hazlet Village Square through the work of our Economic Development Director, Amber Clark. And others, we're finally seeing progress with this project. It's 132 units, and will be opening hopefully in the fall of 2023. Other developments, Copper Creek, 50 homes up on the north side of Hazlet. Silverstone is 28 homes, which are sold out. They're 1 acre lots off of Powell Road. Silverleaf is 150 homes off of Bennett Road, across from College Fields. Trader Joe's, we're still pushing for, across from Whole Foods. Woodward Way is well underway. That's 49 affordable housing unit behind north of Whole Foods. And of course, Buddy's Pizza along Grand River. And there's a picture of the Woodward Way project. Village of Okemos. Project continues to move along at a very less than a pace that we had hoped, but we stay positive. That is a 206 unit development at the corner of Hamilton and Okemos. The Hazlet Village Square, again, is way ahead of the Village of Okemos project. This is 290 units. It's on the 19 acres at the corner of Marsh and Hazlet. It's going to be a terrific development. It's gone through all the approval stages. It's received a CRA, which is a Community Rehabilitation Act tax-free zone or tax growth-free zone over 10 years. So now the entire Hazlet Village Square, all 30 acres between Marsh Road and going west, are going to be under development. Let's talk about our finances for a minute. If you can't keep your finances in order, everything else is going to fall apart. Pension, retiree health care, and fund balance. Let's take a look back real quick at our pension system. If you go back just a few years ago, on our township pension fund, it was $1.7 million underwater. Retiree health care was $4 million underwater. And the MERS pension, $34 million underwater. Fast forward and you can see comparison of where our funding levels are today on the left or on the right versus where they were on the right. It's really incredible work that this board and former boards have done. It's incredible work. We have eliminated our township pension fund deficit of 1.7. It's now an asset of $500,000. Our retiree health care, which was $4.7 million underwater, is now 100% funded. And our MERS pension fund, we've eliminated about $8 to $10 million of that debt. So our finances remain in very strong order. We committed back in 2017 when we did the police and fire millage that we would commit $1.5 million per year to help eliminate police and fire debt. Voters overwhelmingly approved it. Here's the actual number for 2023. We're required to put in $3.1 million. We're actually putting in 5.3. We're putting in 2.2 million more than is required by the actuarial study. So not only are we putting the 1.5 in, we're putting another additional $750,000 into our pension fund. Why? Because we've eliminated our other debts. And when you start eliminating your other debts, you can really take on the last remaining large debt that we have, the MERS pension. Let's talk about our fund balance, our general fund balance. What was it in 2013, a decade ago? $5.2 million. What is it today? $14 million. So at the same time that we've been paying off all of our debts, we're accumulating, stocking up to take on that one project or to fund these other ones at more of an accelerated rate. The board's adopted maintain a 25% fund balance, which would be $6.3 million. Not only are we accelerating paying off all of our debt, we're remaining in very strong financial condition. Some of that money can be earmarked towards accelerating our road program, accelerating our pension, or looking at another project. Motor pool fund balance. This is how we pay for ambulances, fire trucks, police cars. Back in 2013, we had an $80,000 fund balance. The township in 2012 had spent $1.1 million. Mr. Steich's first year in office, I mentioned $1.1 million. When I got here, I said, what are you spending $1.1 million for? He said, because I wanted to. That's a pretty good answer. That sounds like Ron, doesn't it? But anyway, we have built up that fund balance. Now, we haven't reduced our commitment to providing excellent equipment. We just replaced the battalion chief car. We just got our brand new ambulance. We just received a brand new ladder truck. And our pumper is on order and should be here in about a year. And we just bought 3 new police cars, and they are all paid for in cash. No debt for all of it. And that's the key. Taxable value. Let's talk about that for a minute. Add East Lansing's taxable value and Delhi Township's taxable value, and it comes out to just over $2 billion. It equals ours. Their total taxable value, the value of their community, is the same as Meridian Township. But their population, if you add them together, is much higher. So if you take a look at the taxable value per capita, a big number that you look at when you decide whether you're going to build Whole Foods here or Chick-fil-A, or you're going to bring a franchise, you look at this number. And this number is really important because in Delta and East Lansing, it hovers around 25 to 30 million, and it's 45 million in Meridian Township. Our taxable value per capita, it's much higher in Meridian Township. Another key area is the environment. Trustee Wazinski and others, the Environmental Commission, have worked really hard on this Build Back the Buffer campaign in the protection of wetlands. We just added our 4th solar array at the police building. The other ones are at the marketplace, the service center, the South Fire Station, and of course our first one out front of this building. We just received, although we're having some issues with it, we just received a grant to do a second recycling center. You know, we have this recycling center up in the north part of the community, and we're looking at adding a brand new recycling center at the service center. Although we're running into issues with cost, there's some, we're going to try our best to march forward with that grant through EAGLE. American Rescue Plan funding, we received $4.5 million. Where has it gone? $1.3 million to help pay for more roads. Because guess what? Back when we did the bond, we anticipated roads were going to cost this much. And now roads are costing, with COVID and everything, with inflation, they're costing a lot more. And so the board decided we're going to help fight that inflation by contributing $1.3 million. $970,000 towards IT enhancements for our entire facilities. A really important decision, $262,000 for 4 electric cots for the fire station. If you're ever in need of service from the fire department, you'll be really happy to be served by an electronic cot rather than the old ones that we're currently getting rid of. And so we've appropriated $2.5 million. There's $2 million remaining. The board's going to take up the discussion on that on the 29th of this month. For the remaining $2 million, they're going to look at a smorgasbord of potential projects. Public safety. I mentioned the new ladder truck. It arrived about 3 weeks ago. Our police department was the first township in Michigan to be accredited. That is every 3 years. It happened in 2019. We're up for reaccreditation, and Captain Grillo and Chief Plaga are leading us through that. We're proud to be the first department to be recognized in the state of Michigan. Outdoor warning siren. You know, we need 15 warning sirens to cover the entire township. And back in 2013, we were putting our 4th one up at Watch Park. With Director Maisner. We now are at 11. We only need 4 more to complete the entire township. And here's a map of where those, in the red, are where the sirens are at. And the yellow area, up in the northern or eastern part of the community, are the last 4 to go up. Within the next 3 years, we'll have the entire township covered. And guess what? Each one of those were paid for in cash. That's right. We have a canine unit, Aries. We used to have 2. One of the dogs decided that he liked to bite a lot of people, so that wasn't quite working out for us. So that dog was relieved of duties about 2 years ago, and it's a true story, right? Yes, sir. Yeah. Verified it. So the board just approved a second canine to come back. Not the same dog, but a new canine in 2023. I decided we'd have a naming contest. Thought it was a great idea. Chief Plaga said, that's really, you know, that's a stupid idea because the dogs are trained with a name when they come. So if you change it, we got to send the dog back. So that idea went out the door too.
Does he also speak Hungarian?
I don't know. He might. They don't tell me anything. There's a picture of the electronic cots. We'll be getting 4 of those as soon as the supply allows. We're doing improvements to the squad room at the police station. You know, recruiting police officers right now is really difficult. And if you bring them into our squad room the way it looks right now, they're going to ask where Marcia and Peter and Bobby are. That's a joke, the Brady Bunch. It looks like 1970 in there. So we're hopefully upgrading the squad room. Here's a really an important note, the Central Fire Station payoff. Back in 2012, voters approved a 15-year bond to pay off the new Central Fire Station. Of course, it was a breeze getting it built. Nobody challenged us. It was wonderful. Easy process, unless you're on the Planning Commission or board. But the blue line there, the red line is our anticipated revenue. The blue line is the revenue we've actually received because of our growth. So guess what? Our forecast tells us that we're going to be able to pay off the fire station, and not in 2028, but in 2025, 3 years ahead of time because of our net proceeds. Retention, recruitment, and well-being, really an important thing for this township, to be able to recruit and retain the talent that we need. And these are just some of the things we do. Flex time and casual wear in the township. We do an annual Excellent Award program. We go to we do a lot of things here. I will tell you that while communities struggle to maintain employees, we are not. We have 168 full-time employees, and right now we're at 165. So we're almost at 100% and like I said, recruiting paramedics and police officers today is very, very challenging. This is some of the teamwork. 4 collective bargaining agreements settled this year without any use of legal counsel. All of our bargaining contracts are in place for at least 2 to 5 years now. Here's the number I went over on full-time employment. I want to welcome a few new people to the township. Director of Project and Management Operations, Melissa Massey in the back. Dan took him away from the board. He got a high promotion leaving that board and coming to work for us. And so Dan's over here. He's doing a great job as our assistant manager. Our new finance director, we now have a CPA in the finance spot. That's Amanda Garber. And we took her away from Chelsea. And Samantha, our new communications manager, she's back over here. She's doing just a tremendous job for us. She was on staff and got promoted. Our new supervisor, Patricia Jackson, been in her spot since 2000 on the Planning and Zoning Board, and now here 22 years later is the supervisor. 2 new trustees, Marna Wilson. Little known fact, Marna Wilson was on the board back in the 90s, and she's back. And Scott Hendrickson joined us as well. They joined us around April, May, somewhere there, March.
Yeah.
An award through our communications department. We went up against some of the biggest cities, Los Angeles and others, for the best production of township board meetings. Samantha's team won. We beat LA, so we're really happy about that. The Daniels Drain Project this summer. There was a sinkhole on Powell Road that we had to deal with. The community resource millage back in August to help fund recreation and the senior center and human service. Here's something you're really going to notice, and that's the new signage that's going up. It's going to be tremendous. You'll start seeing those signs go up in January. 2 of them will be illuminated, one on our campus here and one at the marketplace to send messages to the community. Just a phenomenal. We've been at this project for 7 years, and we're finally, and guess what? It's all paid for in cash. That's the most important thing. Lake Lansing to MSU Pathway, you'll start to see phase 1 and phase 2 underway. That's from Shaw over off of Hagedorn, the music building, all the way over to the corner of Grand River and Park Lane, phase 1 and 2, and then we're engineering in 2023 for phase 3. The township's pension plan is now debt-free. The retiree health care is now debt-free. We used to pay over $500,000 of annual payments to these 2, retiree health care and township pension fund. We were paying $500,000 in our general fund for those. We're no longer having to pay. That's how we're able to take up the warning sirens and all the stuff we're doing and pay cash for them. Harris Nature Center, 25 years. The floating islands at Central Park South. Celebrate Meridian was back this summer. Here's the summary. We have Michigan's #1 parks and pathway system. unequivocal, it's number one. We have a very safe community. We're growing. We're one of the few communities in Ingham County that's growing. In fact, we had the highest growth of anyone in Ingham County. But it's not out of control. At 1% per year, I would say it's pretty much under control. We're financially extremely strong. We're environmentally conscious, great neighborhoods, and some of the best schools in the nation. You take all that together, and that's how you package this community and sell it to either residents or new businesses or people looking forward to bring their kids to school here. That's what's happened in 2022, and since we've got more important stuff to do tonight, I don't think we're going to take any questions. We're going to move right into the reports from all of you, but thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I got the message. So the next part of our agenda involves a essentially joint meeting with the township boards and commissions. And before we start with that, I'd like to first thank you all for the time, energy, work, and service that you provide for Meridian Township. I think I speak for the entire board and probably much of the staff and management of the township in thanking you at this time for the work you've already done. We haven't had this kind of meeting for about 3 years. And it's something that we had before. It gave us an opportunity, I thought, to, first of all meet each other, and secondly, to educate each other on what we were doing in our different boards and commissions. And that's what we are hoping you're planning to do for us tonight. So I'm looking for a short presentation that explains what your board or commission does to those of us who may not understand that already, to report on your activities and successes of the past year, the relationship you see to the goals and objectives of the board that Mr. Walsh has talked about, and maybe even some suggestions about how we might help you do your jobs better and how we might do ours relative to your jobs better. And so I have a list here. I think you have a copy of the list. And we will start with the Big Planning Commission and with Mr. Trezise, who I believe, Mr. Bloomer. Mr. Bloomer is going to talk to us about the Planning Commission, and we will ask that you go to the podium so that the recording system can pick up your comments.
The Planning Commission is responsible for a number of different types of things. Probably one of the biggest projects is the master plan, which we are just now getting into reviewing and updating. We haven't actually gotten into it yet, but that's the next big step in our projects. I'll just go through, basically, I just want to say what he said, and then sit back down, because he covered a lot of the things that we have handled in the last year. But let me go over a few things for you. One of the big projects, and before I get into this, I mentioned it to Frank a minute ago, I do want to thank our staff. They've been wonderful. They come to us with an agenda and information. They make our job look easy. And it is after they do all the legwork. They are just tremendously productive, and haven't yet, other than typos, which we catch frequently, I haven't caught them in a significant error all along. They are really a pleasure to work with, and we're very grateful for the assistance they give our committee. But one of the really big projects, and it's going to the board, I understand we're finished with it, and it's now going to the board, is the revision of the sign ordinances. I can tell you, I've been a government attorney for almost 50 years. When I saw the Meridian Township sign ordinances, I thought my head was going to explode. They were confusing, overlapping, internally inconsistent, and just basically ununderstandable. They've been revised, they've been simplified, they've been streamlined. The work of the staff was terrific on this. We all reviewed them, and I can say that the board, I think, is going to be truly impressed when you see the product that comes to you. The different things that we have accomplished, well, right now, like I said, we're about to start on the master plan. We are also we just started dealing with, well, actually, we had 2 meetings on it, the new recreational marijuana plan for the, or map for the township. That's an issue that will be coming before the board. We just dealt with a new housing project that's called the Grand Reserve, which is over by Powell Road and north of Grand River. It's a very interesting and I think quite luxuriously developed rental home unit. And our board discussed it last night, and if I remember, we approved it to go to the board. Hazlitt Village Square and American House are projects that we reviewed and approved. A number of ordinance updates. We also approved changes to the Montessori School, the Sparrow Hospital Emergency Unit on Jolly Road, and the MUPUD ordinance rewrite. Those are just typical of the kinds of projects that come before the board, and we've had them in the time that I've been there. I would like to complain that Scott fled from the board when I got there, and we haven't had him replaced. And I just have learned within the last meeting or two that 2 of our most experienced members are deciding that they have devoted enough time and they want more family time, and they will be leaving. So we will have the most experienced ones. I'm the least experienced, but they're leaving us, and that will leave some serious holes in our projects until they can be replaced with people who've come to us with 5 or 6 years experience. So, but that's, I'm trying to think, ordinance updates, Hazlitt Village Square, and the master plan. That's pretty much it. Are there any questions from the board?
Okay.
No?
Board members,
No? Thank you.
you have questions, comments? Okay, in the meantime, there are other members of the Planning Commission who are here. Would you have anything to add to Mr. Bloomer's comments? If you would. No? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you very much. That was very informative, by the way. The next group is the Pension Board. The representative here tonight is Joyce Vancouvering, who is a recent recipient of Volunteer of the Year in Meridian Township.
And we're going to do the brownfield too. And our
Oh, you're going to do...
And our chair isn't here, and I don't know enough about it, but no, I'm just kidding.
All right, Joyce.
So the pension board, Manager Walsh already reported out on the pension board, but let me get my notes here. We have 42 retirees that are currently receiving benefits. This is the old retirement plan, not MERS, the Municipal Employee Retirement System. And as Frank pointed out, we're 110% funded with a balance of pension asset of $498,000. So it's looking good. We've hit a few bumps in the road, but we're looking forward to working with our new finance director to kind of get back on track. Okay. So it's pension. Any questions?
Board members?
Now, Mr. Schmidt's going to do the brownfield.
So apologies if I skip something. I have some quick notes written down here. So generally, for those of you that don't know, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority is charged with reviewing and implementing brownfield plans within the community. And so a brownfield plan is when you have an existing site that's either contaminated through some previous environmental issue or a functionally obsolete building that can't be used for something in modern times, there's a state act that allows you to capture certain tax dollars to pay for the cleanup of those blighted or environmentally contaminated sites. And so that's what the brownfield largely does, is reviews those plans, make sure they're in compliance with their local policies and the state law, and then makes a recommendation to the board. And the board ultimately adopts or doesn't adopt. And then the brownfield authority is then responsible for the ongoing administration and review of those plans to ensure they're implemented properly. The township has 5 plans currently in place, one under review. Going from oldest to newest, the elevation project is technically a brownfield. They have been capturing for the past couple of years. That is actually our only capturing project right now. And what I mean is they have generated taxes to start paying back some of those costs. That started with the county, and then we realized that as a township we should have our own authority, so they brought it over. After that, the 2 projects that finished this year and we'll start capturing next year are the Hazlet Marathon. That was obviously a contaminated site as a former gas station, and the Joe's on Jolly building, 2360 Jolly Road, was a former tire shop, and so had some contamination on site as well. And so both of those were cleaned up, brought in to new use, and will begin tax capture next year. The Pine Village project, which is now known as the American House project, is under construction, obviously. We have an amendment to that plan that the Brownfield Authority will be making a decision on later this week, and which substantially shortens the capture period from what was previously approved. And so that's actually a very good outcome for us. The last 2 are the Hazlet Village Square project, which was reviewed by the authority this year, recommended to the board. The board ultimately adopted that, and that's for the redevelopment of the remainder of the Hazlet Village Square property. And the authority has reviewed the Village of Okemos brownfield plan a couple times this year, has made a recommendation on that, and the township board will be taking that up for decision sometime in the near future here. So ultimately the Brownfield Authority it becomes an important part of any future redevelopment. And as I've said to a lot of people, the best way to control growth is to grow where you already are, and so use those previously built-on spaces more efficiently, and that's where the Brownfield Authority comes into play. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
First, I would say, for those of you who are not familiar, this is Director Tim Schmidt, Director of Planning and Development in Meridian Township, who has apparently put on many hats in many situations.
Yes, ma'am.
Stood in for us tonight, and we welcome any questions, particularly from the board. At this point, does anyone else have a question for Mr. Schmidt? Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Vancouvering. Next on our list is the DDA, or the Downtown Development Authority, represented tonight by Renee Corey.
Right from the get-go, the first thing I noticed was, one person was looking at their little smartphone, one had a little tablet, and I had this giant side print because even with my glasses, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to see it. So I'm getting old, but just bear with me. Okay, so I wanted to start out by just reminding everybody what our mission is, because that's in essence telling you what we do and what we've done, where we've been and where we're going. To beautify and revitalize downtown Okemos is a very desirable place to shop, live, and do business. It is a commitment to promote and improve quality of life by creating a friendly, walkable community, embracing the natural aesthetics of the river and parks. So in essence, anything and everything that we've done in the past and this year and going forward is going to embrace that mission. Now, what did we do this year to embrace that mission? The very first thing that we did was we provided quality leadership in the management of redeveloping downtown Okemos. And when I say that, I mean that we were supported by all of you to help us try to redevelop our downtown. And as you know, it's been years. And we've disagreed and we've agreed, but we've never felt unsupported. And so I thank you for that. So what we do is we support redevelopment projects by assisting with application processes for DDA TIF and also for the Meridian Township Redevelopment Fund. That is one of the things that we have done, and we worked really hard in past years even to create this TIF, and so where we are today is, we've actually been able to look over some applications. Now, this reminds me, the first quarter of our DDA 2022 year, we reviewed some plans for mixed-use building that some of the redevelopment fund simply couldn't support. They could only commit partial to it. So we were able to, along with Amber primarily, I say we, but it's always her. Anyway, but I'll take the credit while I'm here. So anyway, we've, put applications in for $1.25 million, funds for road and infrastructure improvements, other RAP grants through MEDC. So there's been a variety of things that we've been able to apply for that Amber has helped us with in order to support our mission. And we expect to do the same thing next year. Things are finally, there were a lot of bumps, as some people said in their commissions, a lot of bumps in the road, but now we're starting to get some smooth sailing, and now maybe we're going to get some momentum that we desperately need to control the blight in downtown Okemos. So I'm really excited about that. So also, a little hiccup that we had along Hamilton Road that you might have seen, I think we had a gas main break. We had a problem down there anyway. We discovered that a couple of our street lights were sitting on a gas main, so, and a few other things. So we did have to spend some money to take those out, and they're being stored, and eventually we hope that we can put our street lights back out, because of course that was one of the things we'd accomplished in previous years. And so also, about going back to the bridge work that we've done and some of the initiatives that we're trying to do in order to support the businesses in the area. And again, Amber's taken the lead on a variety of things, but is the small business match $50 certificate with a $50 buy. Also, unfortunately, we had to move our little art fair that we have every year to a different location with all this chaos going on with the roads, I'm putting it mildly, but we hope to get that back too. And actually, someday, Luann, we hope to steal back Celebrate Meridian too, because you stole that from us. Anyway, not really, but we started it, but they made it much more grand. But anyway, we hope to have some place that we will be able to have things like that and to have our art fairs back and not take things away from anything else, but add to. Fortunately, we still have the Douglas J is having their holiday party now this year again, and that was something that, it was small, but people look forward to it. They're having it, I think, on December 4th. Just these little things that tell us that, okay, we've still got some life going and that we're working in a positive direction. So anyway, does anybody have any questions for me or for anyone? Okay.
Okay, thank
you very much.
Renee. Item A4 is the Lake Lansing SAD Advisory Committee. And the name I have is Roger Taylor. Well, that's okay. Come and tell us who you are and tell us about the SAD.
I'm Kurt Armbruster and Chairman of the Lake Lansing Advisory Committee. We're charged with advising the township in the management of Lake Lansing and the watershed. We're funded by a special assessment which goes to the lake owners, property owners, and roughly an area 2 blocks around the lake, which we call Tier 2. And then we also have funding that comes in to make up the total $90,000, that $10,000 from this township and $10,000 from the county. And there's a few $100s that come from the 2 sailing clubs on the lake also. So the total of that is $90,000. And with that thing, with that money, we primarily do two things. We do what I call every year maintenance, which is we survey the lake regularly and then either chemically treat or harvest mostly invasive plants on the lake to keep it so it's usable for fishermen and boaters and everybody. In addition to that, we have what we call special projects, which is like, I think there's 15 drains around the lake that come from the streets or from miscellaneous properties that we put filters on, or we've built swales so that they're naturally filtered. And we also test the waters, I think about 6 times a year. And 2 of those tests are extensive ones where they actually do measurements of oxygen and phosphates and different chemicals and so on. And all of that information is available in our annual reports, which the board gets every year when we produce it in February. And it's also available on the website. Current projects are, we're trying to increase our educational information out to all the residents. So we're sending newsletters out twice a year with friendly hints that you can do it to your properties and so on and so forth to be helpful toward the lake, be lake-friendly kinds of activities. And we also have, for about 5 years, been promoting natural shorelines, which then Township picked up on that here within the last couple of years and is doing it for the other miscellaneous water ponds and lakes in the area. We've also got, and this isn't fully approved yet because we're waiting for the bids to come in to see if we've got enough money to do it, but we've got a project outlined on the south end of the south of the swimming area, beyond Shaw Street, just south of where Lake Lansing and Shaw meet, that is going to be a demonstration project where we're going to build a couple different kinds of natural shorelines so residents that are interested in doing something to their property can look at that kind of information. And then information about natural shorelines is, of course, is available. The Township now has information available, and it's also available on our website. I think there was a suggestion that we provide any ideas of things that the board might do to help us. And one of the problems on the lake is phosphates. Phosphates come, mostly they come through rain, but they also come through fertilizers and those kinds of things. And there are now laws that say that you're not supposed to be able to buy fertilizer that's got phosphates in it, which is a middle number when you buy fertilizer. But what we found out is that there's exceptions to the law. And some of the exceptions are understandable for farmers and golf courses and professionally maintained areas. But also, the one that concerns us a little bit is the lawn care people that I'm not picking on, but one that everybody would know would be like True Green or those kinds of people are also getting around the law. It's my understanding they get around it because the law says you got to test. And so, of course, they test. And if I was in the business, I'd want to have my lawns that I serviced would be the greenest, and phosphates are the way. So it's my understanding that those companies still put phosphates on the lawns. So that might be something that the township could address, if not township-wide, but certainly in the areas where there's around watersheds of some kind. I guess that's the end of my presentation. I'll take any questions.
Okay. Board members? Thank you. Trustee Wazinski.
I'm excited to hear about your Shaw Street demo project for the natural vegetation demo. When do you think that will be?
Well, it's Giannis is our township supervisor or township contact and serves on our board. He's putting it out for bids right now. So we've gone through a design stage and it's out for bids. This is my personal opinion. It's going to come back way too expensive for us, and so we're either going to have to look at additional means of financing or cut the project down, if that in fact is the case, to keep it within our budget. It's our idea to try and get it done this spring.
Other questions? Thank you, Ms. Brewster. The Environmental Commission will be represented by Mr. Bill McConnell.
Good evening. It's always a joy to come together with this group and see all the wonderful things that are going on in the community. I'm going to be a little bit celebratory myself, so bear with me. The Environmental Commission, if you're not aware, has pretty much a two-part mission, partly advisory to the Township Board and partly educational or promotional for environmental-related activities. On the advisory side, we tend to act as an entire commission. In our educational mission, we tend to act in teams of enthusiasts that typically have a member or two of the Environmental Commission, plus a number of other community members who have decided to engage in these topics. Probably the best known team that we have operating is our energy team, which put forward in our 2017 Climate Sustainability Action Plan some very, what I thought were ambitious goals for conservation of energy and generation of renewable energy for township operations. We are on track to meet those goals that were set forth in 2017. And I'll come back to that in a moment about the value of plans in some communities and the implementation of plans in this community. Other activities of the energy team is promoting implementation of renewable energy at the residential level outside of township operations. They've launched a Solarized Meridian program that's built on a model that you may know from Ann Arbor and other communities, where people who have, community members who have solar installations in their homes invite their neighbors to come and meet with installers to talk about the nitty-gritty details of how it happens. So far they've had over 100, I think 112 attendees at these meetings, and something like 15 purchases of rooftop solar arrays, around 121 kilowatt installation. That team works closely with township staff in getting the installations that have gone on at the South Fire Station, the ones that are going on now. 5 solar arrays on the facilities and over 100 solar installations in the community. So really some great progress on that. Another team that we have is known as the Green Team, focuses mainly on recycling and organizing the recycling events that you've seen and heard so much about. 2 major events, spring and fall at Chippewa Middle School, trying to recycle those things that are really tough, like paint and document shredding, metal egg cartons, and most recently electronics. Other smaller events that they've held are at the Meridian Farmers Market for residents to pick up rain barrels and compost bins, pop-up mini recycling events, and you may have heard at the Farmers Market, the Green Fair, where a lot of vendors and other interested groups were promoting sustainable activities at the wonderful new Farmers Market Pavilion. A relatively new activity is something called the Wetland Education Team, which is really trying to promote awareness and proper maintenance of wetlands in the community. There's quite a bit of information that they've developed that's available on the township website. There was a letter and flyer mailed to residents whose property is next to or near wetlands, reminding them of the importance of the buffer between the wetland and their lawns or other land uses, and trying to maintain those filtration functions of those buffers. That effort also included a mailing to contractors who perform lawn care services, reminding them of the regulations and best management practices for applications of phosphates and other materials. Practical native plant guide, wetland walks, along with our wonderful park staff and a World Wetland Day presentation with our township's wetland consultant. The next one, last one that you probably have not heard of yet because it's really getting started and under the radar pretty much, is we don't even have a name formalized for it. It started off as an expansion of our great recycling efforts into including organics. In other words, those lawn clippings or tree branches, and most importantly, food. Trying to capture wasted food. The most interesting activity that I know of in that realm has been an operation gleaning at the farmer's market, where our farmer manager has been organizing so many volunteers that they're fully staffed. At the end of every farmer's market, they collect unsold produce from the vendors, give them a receipt for a tax benefit, put that produce into the refrigerator that would otherwise be used in other parts of the year for the deer management program, and make sure that that food is still fresh when the food pantries can come along and collect it and get those fresh foods to people who could otherwise not afford to or have access to them. There's been a lot of discussion with our local schools about trying to cut down on food waste in the school systems. It's not easy. During this time of COVID, schools have a lot of things on their plate, pun intended, sorry. But that's a really interesting activity. Over 3,000 pounds of fresh produce, by the way, collected at the farmer's market. I think the deer management program is about 7,000 pounds of venison, so we're looking for parity. If you're going to give them 7,000 pounds of venison, you got to give them 7,000 pounds of veg to go with it. Sooner or later, we'll work on some potatoes or something. I don't know how that works. But, and finally, the board has been very gracious in supporting monetarily some relatively small financial contributions to some relatively large impact events. And I think of the tree planting effort that our treasurer launched at Chippewa Middle School, a couple of years ago now. Huge turnout for that event. We always get a huge turnout of students for our recycling events. And now our Green Grants program that has been mainly utilized by schools doing things like butterfly gardens, greenhouses, gardens at the school. So that one is going really, really well. Really happy about that. Finally, in our advisory capacity, we're working on revising our 2017 climate sustainability plan that I mentioned earlier. And what I wanted to point out there is that, as I said, that very ambitious energy conservation and renewable energy goal, we're on track to meet it. Lots and lots of communities around the world are making climate sustainability plans or things like them. Not everyone is actually making progress on achieving those ambitious goals. And that's really sets this community apart. In the same way, our master plan, which many of our trustees were involved in developing years ago, as I also serve on the Planning Commission. So as we look to revising that, the first thing that kind of pops out at me is in that master plan, we said, here are 3 areas in our community where we see potential for greater density. And we would like to encourage that. And as we look back on it, we realize that in at least 2 of those, Okemos and Hazlitt Village Square, we're actually seeing that vision coming to fruition. And lots of people make master plans. We've got 3 notices recently about other communities around us that are making master plans. This community is implementing them, and that's really exciting. So we're going to be very ambitious. Our intention, rather than waiting until we have a complete revision of the climate sustainability plan, is to take the one part, the energy part, that is most well developed, and bring that to the board and see if we're on the right track. There's no reason why we have to do, it's not like a master plan where we have to do the whole thing all at once. We can do it in bits and pieces. As long as the master plan adopts our climate sustainability plan by reference, we can continue to keep that as a live document rather than just kind of putting it in concrete. So we look forward to bringing some new ambitious goals to the board on the energy side, and then the rest of the pieces of the plan as they develop. That's it.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Comments? Thank you. Next is the Community Resources Commission, represented tonight by Suzanne Brous.
Yes. Good evening. It's good to see you. Before, I'd just like to review for some people who maybe don't know what the Community Resource Commission does, is that oversees the delivery of social services to low-income residents of Meridian Township. And this is done through, we have a human service specialist who is works with the commission. She actually does all the work. She is the one who contacts people. When people call in, she is the one who contacts service agents or service organizations. She's the one who contacts churches and things like that to get the resources that are needed. We think of Meridian Township as a pretty affluent community. 19% of the population are low-income people. So there is a great need for these kinds of services. And what the commission does is works with her to facilitate the budget. She always gets approval from one of the commissioners to when she gives out larger sums of money and that kind of thing. We do a few, sometimes at restaurants we will do fundraising and other things like that. So it really is a very important commission, and it does a lot of good in the community. I'm very proud of the work that we've done. I can't give you statistics about how much we've done over the last year. We just got a new community service specialist, Mary McGinnis. Darla Jackson, who had been with us for a long time, resigned. But I can tell you that we are in transition. As I say, we have a new human service specialist work with us. We have a new liaison from the board, Marta. We have a new chair, Georgia, whom you all know will be chair for next year. We also have a new vice chair, Yvette, over here. We found out that I never knew that there was a thing called the code for commissions. I've only been on the commission for 10 or 12 years. But this, one thing it says is, we're supposed to have not only a chair, but a vice chair. So for the first time in a long time, we will have a vice chair. Also, we have another member of the commission here too, Kathleen. So we have that. We have the new liaison. And I think that's probably it. But we need to get reunited. I think we've gotten a little, maybe too relaxed. We were having trouble for a couple meetings getting a quorum. But now the team is revitalized. We will start moving with our new chair and new vice chair, and I think that it's going to be a real good commission, and we'll continue as usual. Are any questions about the commission?
No board members? I'll ask Georgia Steicher if as the new chair, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just that Myrna Wilson is our liaison now, and we're excited to have her as part of our liaison. And our goal this coming year is to make the community more aware of the Community Resources Commission and what we do and who we do it for. That's our number one goal. There are too many places that, when we used to have fundraisers over at various restaurants, they would say, well, what are you? And we would have to explain to them what we were and what we did, and they would go, oh, we didn't know you even existed. So our goal is to make it so that when we say Meridian Cares or Community Resources Commission, that everybody knows who we are and what we do. That's our goal.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Rouse.
Oh, I didn't mention our major funding is from Meridian Cares.
Next up is the Communications Commission. Brian Seipel? Seipel?
Hello, I'm Brian Seipel. We used to have Deborah on our commission. So if you have any communications related issues, you probably already know that. Ask Deborah. She's gonna help us all out. She has been. The purpose of the Communications Commission is 4 or 5 different main things. We advise the board on matters of the video service franchisees that are in the township, Comcast, AT&T, et cetera. Matters of rights of way as they run cables and whatnot through the township. We hear complaints from township residents from time to time, although of course the vast majority go directly to the service providers and air their complaints. But it gives us a chance to hear some of the real issues that people face as they try to connect, or in most cases how they try to figure out why it stopped connecting and how to get it back on again. You know how we all fret when the connection's lost. Not everybody has that problem, though. Of course, there's a young man at the Lansing State Journal that recently did an article. His name is Jared Weber. And in July, he wrote an article about what's called the Ingham County Broadband Survey. And in there, he was putting in quotes from Greg Todd, who's the controller for the county of Ingham County. And Greg was saying, we're trying to get this survey out because we really got to figure out how many people, get a good estimate anyway, don't have broadband access. And, you know, we can think up all kinds of great things on the commissions, along with the service providers who join us in our meetings, by the way. They have representatives that join us. And we get into all kinds of crazy technical communications. It gets fun sometimes. You talk about Starlink and Elon Musk, or was it Skynet and Arnold Schwarzenegger? No, it was Starlink. It's Starlink. But not everybody has access. But what Greg had told him is that there's a Pew Research report that said 77%, it's estimated, of U.S. households have broadband internet access. That's quite a bit. It's a number that larger than I had thought. In Michigan, about 380,000 households don't have it. But what it amounts to in Michigan is 27% of the households that have young children don't. And you see, I guess the point of this was exacerbated by the coronavirus pandemic, which put a challenge on folks who had to go to the internet. And if it's not there, if you don't have it, right? You already know, family members, I'm sure friends, it's happened in our household, what people had to do to say, okay, who's going to watch the kids? The kids can't even go to school and the like. It's tough getting online. It's not as multidimensional as active learning in person, but it's better than not having the information at all. It gives parents a chance to see what the teacher's trying to teach. So I guess what I'm saying is, if we have an ask of the board, keep going with what Deborah has led us to start looking at, and it's in support of everything from the county level survey on the matter, and the results are about to be released, I understand. But also at the state level, the governor has chimed in on this as well, and we can't assume that everybody has access. It's just so valuable to have the access. The survey that was done, the deadline, you may have heard, was extended a couple of times. That's because they only got 3%. And they thought, well, we'd like to get 4 or 5%, which might be about 2,000 of the households. So they're already going to look at just a small slice to try to figure out what's going on everywhere. But anything that you folks can do to help promote the cause of advancing access for the information. We certainly have our own wonderful television channel, and some of that comes from the PEG fees, the public educational government fees, and franchise fees that are paid by the video service providers. We have a wonderful benefit that a lot of communities don't have, but we still don't have access to everybody. Not everybody can even watch it. So that's just the broadband update. Leslie Charles is going to give you an update on the rest of the things that we help.
So Brian covered the connectivity aspect of the Communications Commission, and there's another piece as well, and that's staying connected. So we do that, of course, through the website. That's one of our, and I really think of home TV as sort of our flagship. Thank you, Deborah Guthrie. And this past year, of course, we're in transition like everybody else. So our teams of interns are small but mighty, let's say, in comparison to the numbers we've had in the past. How we, of course, stay connected, we have Prime Meridian Magazine, which is now a spring production. And that allows us to prepare for what we're facing right now, is just hibernate for the rest of the year and look forward to the next issue. But also, of course, taking a look at and staying in regular touch with our wonderful website that we have, which is always constantly, like human beings, in process, trying to improve ourselves. We've made a smooth transition. We have Stephanie now for our esteemed leader. And we have a couple of new members on the commission, and I want to mention a couple of recent things that have happened. In the summer, the Home TV does 3 different interviews on the bond proposals for the primary, and we also had 9 for the election that we just had, 9 candidate interviews, election pre-show on the 8th of November, plus full results recap, as if, well, we probably all did want to see that and hear that, on November 10th. So we have a new presentation, and I'm just catching up on this one, Catching Up with Kenzie, focusing on township highlights. And that's something that you can help our commission on, is letting us know what you're doing. I think it would be great to have an interview with Meridian Cares as I was listening to that presentation, because it is one of the best kept secrets of our township. So just keep thinking, and the Environmental Commission report. So thinking about the fact that we have some internal publicity that we can also do with the help of Home TV and the website, so that we don't have to stay the best kept secret as a township.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yes, Joyce.
Maybe to the commission or to the board, what will the township's involvement be with the countywide broadband initiative? I mean, are we going to be involved in?
Yes.
Okay.
We are involved. We have been involved from the beginning, and I know that because I'm the township representative on that task force at this point. That answer your question?
Yeah.
But I do kind of hear that maybe I should be working more with the Communications Department and the Communications Commission to spread the word about what's happening there and what's happening with the county and the state relative to bringing and expanding broadband in Meridian Township. But fundamentally, the township decided early that we would not go alone, and agreed to participate in this county-wide effort to expand broadband throughout the county. Any others? Next is the Transportation Commission with Mr. Steve Vagnozzi as our spokesman.
Good evening, everyone. An explanation of really the scope of things that the Transportation Commission works on. Basically, we look at both motorized and non-motorized transportation within the township. Actually, having been on the commission a while, we probably spend as much time on non-motorized or the intersection of non-motorized and motorized as we do on motorized. And to simplify that, really, our domain is roads, pathways, and sidewalks. Thanks to the Transportation Commission's comments, MDOT added extra pathway user safety objects on the ongoing Grand River redo project. I don't drive down it that often. I try to avoid it. I'm not, you know, those are probably not yet visible. Okay. But it will include additional pedestrian crossing locations on Grand River. The traffic impact study ordinance update was approved by the Township Board after our commission reviewed and commented on it. The Transportation Commission applied to the Bike League of America for the Bicycle Friendly Community Program, and that's gotten some visibility lately because surveys have been sent out or publicized. It is a quite involved, it's not a slam dunk thing. Okay, there's a lot of documentation and effort that needs to go into that. For those in July, we got our annual presentation from CATA to the Transportation Commission. Initially, when the commission was first formed, Ready Ride and adjustments and improvements to Ready Ride was our primary focus. I think it's fair to say that the state of Ready Ride in Meridian Township at this point is fairly stabilized, and what we're just doing is tweaks. Some examples of the tweaks: when we added extra hours, okay, our first guess of when people wanted to ride overstated the demand in the evening. And so what we wound up doing in those very underutilized time periods is we swapped them for early morning, where the utilization was much higher. I need to say that CATA has been a great partner and has showed real flexibility in terms of adapting to our requests and providing us the data that allow us to make change requests. An example of that, situations change over time. We had established a limited number of technical, the principal service area for Ready Ride is the township. Okay. We had added a handful of close by stops outside the township that were things like the MSU Clinical Center, where we figured that there was a need or there would be use. With the recent opening of the McLaren new hospital just off the campus of MSU, we traded, or we've made a recommendation to the Township Board to ask CATA to trade. We had a stop at the East Lansing Aquatic Center, which even after they reopened this summer, we've never had a single passenger utilize that stop. So we traded that for, we made a recommendation to the Township Board that we ask CATA to trade that stop for the McLaren complex. Okay. In September, we got a presentation from the Ingham County Road Department regarding an upcoming 2023 project at the intersection of where Lake Lansing Road curves, and Tower is there, and there are some other streets. They're going to redo that intersection next summer. Essentially, instead of having it be a T-type or a standard intersection, they're going to change Lake Lansing to make a 90-degree curve, in both directions, and all of this sinks in. We're also doing. We had a coordination meeting with the East Lansing Transportation Commission because this intersection sits at the boundaries. And one of the things that we worked on was to ensure that there are good non-motorized connections at that intersection, because it is one of the key East Lansing pathways, comes up through a park at that point. And we're scheduled. In the future, we're going to review the transportation-related goals and objectives for the township's master plan update. So we're going to be waiting to coordinate transportation or provide recommendations with transportation-related portions of the master plan. So that's the activity that goes on. On behalf of the Transportation Commission, the information that has been coming out, we have two big construction projects going on, and I deal with both of them, okay? And we're appreciative of the frequent updates, status of construction that are coming, I believe, out of the communications area of the township. Okay, but when I see those, I immediately post those on our subdivision Facebook group, and I've gotten a lot of positive responses, because if you live in my subdivision, you are right almost at the construction zone. So I will answer any questions anyone has.
Dave Primo.
I'm wondering if the township, and I don't know if this has to do with transportation or energy, but is giving any consideration to put in charging ports for electric cars in township facilities and possibly the marketplace and so forth. I think those are very much in keeping with our goal of becoming more climate friendly.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question, Commissioner Primo. So you will actually see that will be on the draft 2023 goals that will be presented to the board at their next meeting. So we have done some preliminary examination. We qualify for rebates to install the chargers. The problem is that our current panels do not support the chargers, so we need to bring a new electrical service into the complex. We would only be able to support maybe a handful of chargers between this building and the public safety building. So our plan is to develop a plan for bringing in that supply in 2023 and possibly construction next year or 2024. And we're also examining some of the logistics and realities of electrifying or going to electric vehicles for our fleet as well.
Thank you, Mr. Officer. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Vagnuzzi. Park Commission, Mary Nardo Ferris.
Here.
Hi, good evening. My name's Mary Nardo Ferris. I'm the current chair of the Park Commission. And the Park Commission is a body of 5 elected individuals that works with Director Maisner and her wonderful staff on oversight of the properties and the facilities and the programs for Parks and Recreation for Meridian Township. We've had a banner year since COVID. We had a lot of use of the facilities, an uptick, which has not quit, which has kept our staff busy. We were really happy this past year to reinstitute some special events in 2022 that included Celebrate Meridian, Meridian Heritage Festival, and the Wednesday night concerts at Marketplace on the Green from June through October. And those were very well attended and really appreciated. I want to thank any one of you that was a volunteer. I know quite a few were at particularly Celebrate Meridian, and they have been really embraced by the township residents, and it couldn't be done without the volunteers, of which you were some of those. We also had Harris Nature Center celebrated their 25th anniversary in July. And in conjunction, we have worked with Able Eyes, which is a contractor, to provide virtual tours. And Harris Nature Center now has a virtual tour that is posted on their website and on ours also. And that is particularly helpful for those that want to look at facilities in advance, and also if they have emotional or anxiety or physical concerns, they can check that out before actually visiting the facility. We have this past summer installed 5 biological floating islands in Central Park South, and that was a project that was a long time in the works and really exciting. They were planted with native plants that were grown from seed collected at the parks and land preserves, and the intent is to improve the water quality at that particular water body. We have also completed, the commission in conjunction with Luann and her staff have completed the Parks and Recreation 5-year capital outlay. Excuse me, my previous work is with infrastructure, so capital outlay kind of comes out there a little too quick. Anyway, with the 5-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan in March. That is required for DNR grant eligibility, of which the township has been really good about securing and leveraging monies that we have with grants that we can receive. We are looking in our 5-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan to particularly look at accessibility issues, further enhancing those, further enhancing inclusion considerations for the many varied recreational activities that are available in this particular township. We hear from a lot of people, but we also have a lot of use of different types of activities we maybe don't hear about, and we work really hard to accommodate all different types of people and cultures and using some of those properties. We are currently underway with our deer management program at our parks and land preserves, in addition to 19 of the private properties, and this will be occurring from September through January of this year with 64 volunteer hunters. The venison is then donated to the local food banks. As far as our goals for 2023, we're focusing intently on repair and maintenance work is at the forefront of what we're going to be looking at this year, starting with the Meridian Historical Village buildings and repairs and the maintenance there. We have currently contracted with an architectural engineering group called Cornerstone Architects to do conditional assessments of those structures. Another area of maintenance that we're looking at is a Central Park Pavilion renovation that housed our farmers market for 40 years and needs some attention there. It's still used in a different capacity, but it does need some attention. And then we're also looking at exterior upgrades to Harris Nature Center building. We are in the process of obtaining engineering plans and cost estimate for also renovating the canoe landing in Ferguson Park. And then we'll use that information to obtain future grants for completion and construction of that work. We will also be starting some planning and engineering work on a universally accessible playground that would be located central to the township. Something a little different and upgraded from some of our typical playgrounds. And the last thing is we're in the process of submitting what will be 3 grant applications for 2023 under the federal Spark grant program, which funds were set aside for specifically park projects from the American Rescue Plan funds for Michigan. The Park Commission just today, we had our meeting right before this meeting, had some discussion on prioritizing the projects and identified the first project that will go in. Those grants can be a minimum of $100,000 up to $1 million for each one. We're able to put in 3 over the course and no more. And our staff, specifically Director Maisner, is working to submit our first grant. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, thank you. The Economic Development Corporation, Kim Thompson.
Hello. Just to start, I'm going to read our mission statement because, you know, what is a corporation and a township? The mission of the EDC is to set the standard in creating an entrepreneurial culture, be the example for revitalization of our business districts, and to be the leaders in building sustainable public and private partnerships. And, you know, since the last time we were here in 2020, most of the work that we've been doing is in supporting established businesses to keep their doors open and to keep them to have supplies come in. So that was a lot of what happened in the previous last couple years. But things are really starting to move now, and it's really kind of exciting. And I'll bring it up again. The Hazlet Village Square is just very exciting. And with Director Clark and Director Schmidt's assistance, you know, they secured that 16.5 acres to become that new development with approximately 290 homes. And there'll also be restaurants and some retail space there. At the other end of that development is the American House Meridian. And I don't think everyone understands that there's actually retail space in there. And they have already leased 3,000 square feet of that already from different, you know, places across the street or for whatever. So that's good. Meridian Township is a redevelopment-ready community. At the time that we received it, I think we were the only township that had that designation, and honestly, I don't know if we still are or not. MEDC has changed a few of their requirements, but we've submitted the paperwork that they need and fully expect that to come through again as well. So really what we've been focusing on is to support the businesses through all this construction and through all of the fun and frivolity that we've had. So one of the things that we did, we purchased and printed shop local signs that went along the detour routes to, you know, let residents know how to get to Playmakers and, you know, how to get around. And some of those are still up. And the other thing that we're doing is we're seeking some alternate funding sources for our local businesses to sort of mitigate what's happening. And the first thing that we did in August was mob the roadblock. We all went to Playmakers and then went to a couple other businesses. And I think we still are sort of thinking about some of those in the spring, but as somebody pointed out, we'll be hibernating soon. And the other one is the bonus bucks for, you know, the local shops so that we can get people, traffic going in there. I also wanted, I don't know if everybody knows that one of the things that Amber and our team does is ribbon cuttings for new businesses. If they've just are opening for new or are having a re-grand opening, that is something that we do for those businesses free of charge. They get some advertisement and people there with big scissors and ribbon. And we've been averaging 2 or 3 a month for 22. So that really speaks well to how our community is really responding to this new environment. A couple of the notable ones was Buddy's Pizza and then the Joe's on Jolly. which was a long time coming, but is going to be a really great asset. And just a couple that are coming up. Trader Joe's, we're still keeping our fingers crossed for that one. And we have King Pho Restaurant. These are all businesses that are either opening or relocating into the township as it stands. King Pho, Rag Stock, changes hair, Refresh IV, which is very cool. You go in and they give you a nice little bag of things to make you feel better. It's great. You know, vitamins and such. And then the Sparrow Medical Facility and the Hypershine Great Water Works. So that's what we have. Any questions? I know it sounds interesting, doesn't it? I made it sound much more. Yes, ma'am.
What's wrong with Trader Joe's? Why is it taking so long?
It's supply chain. It's steel supply chain stuff. I mean, yeah, that's it. I don't believe there's any other issues there. Just that. So.
Okay.
That's right. I thought I had the right answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Board of Review, Lanny Burnett.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Lanny Brunette, and basically the Board of Review, its primary purpose is to hear tax appeals and exemptions. There are 6 full-time board members and 2 alternates. Sometimes the alternates are needed because there's 3 days, full days, morning and afternoon, and not everybody can make that time, so the alternates keep pretty busy. You know, and the primary purpose, as I mentioned, is to hear tax appeals and exemptions. Sometimes the exemptions are poverty exemptions, veterans exemptions, things of that nature. We're on track in March to meet for those 3 full days, and they're not. Sometimes they're in the evening as well. That accommodates people who work during the day. A couple years ago during COVID, it was all done on Zoom, which was pretty interesting, but relatively safe too. So, in many ways, we also meet throughout the year, basically, kind of preparing ourselves for the March meetings, but also to corrections, kind of minor bookkeeping things. So the primary time is in March, and that's when we're really busy. So, and it is kind of interesting because some of the exemptions, a lot of people think it's just disputing your taxes and things of that nature, but the veterans exemptions and poverty exemptions, as I mentioned, there's a lot of people that need those, and it's a certain income level, and it gets scrutinized pretty well. So. Other than that, that's all I have for that, and we do expect to be relatively busy as we'll call it, the values of increase. Therefore, people are going to get notification of that, and we'll probably be relatively busy this year. So, any questions?
Any questions? Treasurer Duchesne.
Thank you and the whole board for your service. Of all of our boards and commissions, yours probably is one of the hardest, in the sense you sit down for 3 days and listen to long, arduous tax appeals and make a fair decision for our residents and our businesses. Appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure you know that we did this board raised the poverty exemption for 2023. 150% of poverty wage will get you a 50% reduction in your property taxes. And we're willing to look at that. If the demand is strong, a lot of people that are bringing those cases before you, this board realize this is a first step, and we're open to other steps. We look forward to hearing back from you and other board members as to how that goes this year. If you get more citizens that are not in abject poverty, but still certainly struggling, in a property tax waiver or exemption makes a difference, we want to know about it, and we'll look to implement more policy to help those families.
If there is one thing that this is a tough nut, but people, you know, they panic when they try to go through this process, and you know, the township, what my feeling and work with the assessor is, you know, the township, in this regard, is fair. All you need, but what you have to do is bring evidence of that to the board of review. And a lot of people aren't, they're notified of it, it's in writing, and there's probably a good 30–40% people come in totally unprepared. And they're probably right in their claim, but if they're not prepared, we can't do a thing about it. So we try to educate people, and I do think we're fair. My background, I'm a real estate appraiser, so I understand values, I understand the evidence, and it's not always an appraisal, it's just data. And sometimes they just need to bring in a few pieces of information that's relevant, not looking up on the township site and what their neighbor's state equalized value is. That's not relevant information. That's different. But just bring evidence. And I'll tell you that the township is very fair, and sometimes even bending over backwards to, sometimes people come in on the first day and we tell them that they can come back by the second or third day with this particular evidence, we'll hear it. And many people have done that. Other people just don't, and sometimes they're in tears, but you can't. You know, you just try to tell them what to do. But again, we try to, and they do stress, and it is right in writing that they just bring evidence, and it's, and like I said, it's not always an appraisal, it's just evidence of, could be from a real estate agent, a house that's sold right nearby, very similar, and sometimes we do the analyzation, we only have 10 minutes, but sometimes there's space between the two, and we're more than happy to work through it too. So that's one thing I'm kind of proud of, is the township is fair. It's not like there's just a bunch of fuddy-duddies saying no, 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 and so I'm proud to be a part of that. So I don't know, any other questions or comments?
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Yep.
Next is Corridor Improvement Authority. Bruce Peffers?
Amber is graciously.
Okay. We'll hear from Director Clark.
I was silly enough to offer to stand in for the report. How crazy of me. I am very happy to work as a staff member for the Corridor Improvement Authority, established in 2017 as a part of bringing toward the Grand River Reshaping the Avenue vision that this township had. This year has been a little rough for the CIA. We've lost our chair and vice chair this year, so leadership is a little wayward for those volunteers in the room that would like to take on another board or commission. We meet on Wednesdays with the goal of and focus of support of attraction, retention, and expansion of the Grand River Avenue. It goes essentially from our border line starting into the township on Grand River to Cornell Road, and encompasses the Meridian Mall and the Wheat Jewelers, Kelly's Consignment commercial complex area. The big thing for the CIA right now is funding. It is a corridor improvement authority by the Act, and so they have the ability to have a TIF, much like a DDA. They don't have access to a TIF, so there's no generation of funding. One thing we ran into was with our collaborative effort with the Transportation Authority to have MDOT do additional pedestrian crossings along Grand River. We wanted the lighting mechanisms to accompany those, and MDOT said essentially you could have that if you're going to pay for it. Without the commission having any money, there's no way to go after a matching grant or any other sources of refund or other sources of funding for those improvements. We also have the Meridian Mall. Some research of other communities that have redeveloped large commercial areas like malls. What are they doing is they're using other tax increment funding resources that are available. So our closest TIF would be the CIA, and so that is their suggestion recommendation. That's what we've been working on since our meeting in February, working with the assessor to come up with what would be the proposal. We have an active TIF right now with the DDA. Our hope would be that we would have the 7 tax jurisdictions also included on that capture for the TIF. We also know we need to have a strong argument because of the history of our DDA TIF. Our suggestion would be less than 20 years, and we've worked with the assessor to come up with an accumulation or projected number at a 2% rate. We have our next meeting for the CAA hopefully tomorrow. Hopefully we have members of quorum at the Central Fire Station to talk about, I say fireplace every time, I don't know why. every time. Central Fire Station at 6 o'clock tomorrow to discuss that and move that forward. If the question is what could the board do to support the CAA, it would be a TIF. I think CIA members have a hard time discerning whether or not to continue to come forward with knowing that they're going to have the hurdle of the lack of funding of being able to do small business development grants, facade improvements, or even help the major redevelopment of the mall. So that would be my suggestion, is think about the future of the CAA with the TIF.
Thank you. Question? We'll get back to you.
I think so.
Next is the Local Officials Compensation Commission. I believe Tanya Pratt is not here tonight, couldn't be here tonight. Is there anyone here from that board?
I don't serve on the board, but just a little quick 1-minute update on what they do.
Okay.
This is a group of 5 members of the community who are appointed by the board, and their one and only job, but it's an important one, is determine the salaries of the board members. And they have the authority on that, and they're the only ones. They can set the salaries. It's done in odd years, so it's coming up in January of 23. They'll do that. Once they act, those salaries are put in place. The only thing that can happen is they take place unless the board, by a majority vote, were to turn those down, reject those. So that's the role of the Local Officers Compensation Committee, determining the salaries of park commissioners and the township board, all the elected officials, and they do that in January of odd years, and that's set by the state of Michigan law. That's their role.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.
Walsh. Zoning Board of Appeals, David Primo.
David Primo's going to let Tim talk.
Okay.
I just really like standing behind this thing.
We know.
So the Zoning Board of Appeals, as you may realize from its name, hears appeals of zoning-related issues. In most communities, this is a very important board because in most communities, this is where you get sued the most often because these decisions get appealed to courts if they go in a way that is not the way someone likes. So the ZBA, it plays a very important role in the community. In the last year, they had 18 cases. 1 was withdrawn. They actually did turn 1 down. And we did get, the person did bring the property into conformance with the ordinance. They early in the year did recommend that staff draft up some new standards for review for them. Those were implemented by the board, and they would, I think, continue to say thank you to this day because it has made them much more efficient in how they're able to function. We do have a full board right now, but we do have 2 vacancies for you people at home. I'm looking at you for alternates. The alternate for the ZBA is a great way to get your toes wet because we don't need you every month. You can come if you want. And you can slowly ease yourself into volunteering for the community. Generally, we hear cases about your neighbors. I mean, that's the most common case you get at the ZBA is a residential case in a residential neighborhood. So it's a very important board, and we would encourage anyone that's interested to please reach out, and we'd be happy to get you on board.
Thank you. Mr. DeShane.
For the record, Director Schmidt, have we been sued since you became the Director of Planning and Community Development?
You know, Mr. Treasurer, 2 years ago I would have told you I've never been sued in my career, and then I had a ZBA case go very sideways at my previous job. So we have not since I have been here.
Yes.
Another question. If all the changes to the ordinance that you and your team have done, has that made the ZBA's job easier?
So I think the treasurer can chime in on this, but specifically the changes that the board ultimately approved for setbacks and lot coverages around the lake were a great benefit. It didn't solve the problem because in the end there's still weird situations out there that require this, but the ordinance clearly wasn't working. We were getting these same cases over and over again, and generally my rule of thumb is if you see it twice, you probably need to change something, and that's what I've related to the ZBAs. If they see something, let us know and we'll take a look at it. And so I think it has reduced the cases.
I would agree.
Okay. Anyone else? Our final group is land preservation. Is there anyone here from land preservation? Yes.
Hi, I'm Jamie Heller. I'm the chairwoman of the Land Preservation Advisory Board. We serve as an advisory to the Township Board, and we're created by a millage of the people for the acquisition and maintenance of natural areas of high value for the township. When that first started, the goal was 10% of available land, so about 600 acres. We're just shy of 1,000 acres at this point. So we're at a point of transition from acquisition to long-term land maintenance. In this last year, some of the things that we have done has been with the creation of the Meridian Conservation Corps. It is a volunteer base of about 224 members. They have done 58 volunteer opportunities for stewardship and 20 educational programs. So they focus on the removal of invasive species, tree plantings, native flower plantings, and the monitoring of vernal pools, which actually have critical species in the state of Michigan in our area, which is really, really fascinating, cool that we have. And they've put in over 1,000 hours this year. We've also focused with the planting native Meridian in partnership with Harris Nature Center and the parks. Part of this is we have our volunteers collect seed of natural flowers and their original genotypes from our parks and preserves, and then we are planting them back into our preserves and parks to help with the building of natural species and helping to replant where invasive species have been. We are working towards including these to give away and sell to members of the community. We like to say that wildlife doesn't know property boundaries. So when there are invasive species and people are planting them for their gardens, we're trying to encourage more native local species instead, because a bird's going to eat a berry and leave that deposit behind on a preserve, and you never know what is going to be in there. So the more native species that we can have in the township, the better. So we've had about 800 native wildflowers planted on 6 different parks and preserves this year as part of that. 2023 goals is to continue with the Planting Native Meridian program. We are also focused on the installation of rules signage for our preserves. They are different than parks, so make sure that those who are visiting our properties know how to behave when they are on the properties. We also this year introduced new community-friendly namings for our preserves, which will be announced when the signage is put in next year. And then we're going to be continuing to host more educational workshops on a variety of conservation and sustainability efforts, and expanding our current collaborations with Michigan State University. We've had really great partnerships with them in the past for deer management studies. We're also working with them and the DNR on a fish study for Lake Lansing for some pike spawning habitat that we believe is there. Any questions?
Wow. Thank you very much. That's the last of the boards and commissions we have.
Can you please clap for all of these?
I love that. clearly, for somebody who's been working around here for a long time, I learned a lot tonight. I did not know and did not understand, and I appreciate all of you coming together to share that with us and with each other. Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I just wanted to take a moment to expand on something that Director Schmidt had pointed out, which is that we have a number of excellent volunteers, as we see around the room tonight, but we also have a number of vacancies, and I was running through here at the end just to see how many we had. We've got, sounds like 3 upcoming vacancies on the Planning Commission, maybe 4. We've got 1 on the Pension Board, 4 on the Downtown Development Authority, 4 in the Community Resources Commission, 1 in the Communications Commission, 1 in the Transportation Commission, 1 in Economic Development, 3 in Corridor Improvement Authority, 2 in the Local Officials Compensation Commission, 2 in the ZBA, and 1 on Land Preservation.
Okay.
And so we've got, an excellent cadre of volunteers here in the room. If you'd like to sign up for more, there's always more hours in the week. But for anyone at home also who's interested in becoming a part of the team here at Meridian Township, paper applications, of course, are always available at the Township Hall. There is an application online. If you go to the government page under Boards and Commissions, apply for public service, and you can check 1, 2, 6 boards or commissions that you'd be interested or willing to serve on. That's how I started here in the township, getting involved. I came out for 1 and ended up doing 3. And it's a great way to get involved in your community. It's a great way to learn more about your community. And you get to come and talk about all the great things you've done. And so please consider going out and applying for those positions, because we'd love to have you.
Yeah. I would add that I noticed tonight, though I don't know everybody in the room personally, I noticed that there are a couple of examples where some of our volunteers are already working on more than 1 or 2 of our boards, and we thank you again as well, and encourage others to join us. Other comments? Then we come to item 8 on our agenda, comments from the public. I have 1 green card. This is from Roger Taylor. Is it Roger?
Roger has left.
Oh, he has? Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Mr. Vagnuzzi.
My name is Steve Vagnozzi. I live at 2144 Woodfield Road in Okemos. And I would like to address the board and staff on what I consider an emerging, it's actually not worse than emerging, the crisis that is affecting the entire country in terms of housing costs, rental housing costs in particular, even in the multifamily sector. I have, at this point, a 24-year-old and a 31-year-old living in my house because they cannot afford the cost of living in rental housing. I encourage the board, as you're looking at just let me call it COVID relief surplus, the remaining surplus, to apportion a portion of that to look at ways of providing affordable housing for individuals, that are coming of age, and younger families. rents. Just to give you an example, there's a new development at the corner of Collins and Dunkel. Now, it's not in the township. Okay, there used to be a dumpy old hotel there. And I drove by recently, and it said studios from $1,300 a month and up. It was recently reported that the rent nationwide for the average rent nationwide for a 2-bedroom apartment is now approaching $2,000 a month. I'm hoping that, the township, as it looks to what to do with the remaining surplus, will put their heads together and see, can we leverage some of that money, to encourage affordable housing, okay, and to prioritize that in soliciting or approving new developments.
Can I respond to that?
Just a minute. Mr. Vegnuzzi, have you completed
done.
your statement? Okay. Thank you for that. If you come to the podium, please.
I need a knee replacement, so you're asking.
That's all right. We can wait. Many of us do.
We have a proposal that we're going to be building into our 5-year plan that addresses that very issue. The church on Dobie Road has 10 acres that they are asking to be allowed to develop into apartments, which will provide more reasonably priced housing for both immigrants and younger working families. So we are working on that.
Thank you. Mr. Primo, for the record, would you give us your name and address?
It's amazing because I always insist on that when we have our meetings, and then I fail to do it. I'm David Primo, and I live at 3884 Pine Knoll. Had to think about that.
Thank you. Are there others who would like to speak at this time? Well, I will entertain, if there are no other comments, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Hendrickson. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Thank you all very much.